This parasympathetic nervous system, the audience understands that there's an autonomic nervous system with a parasympathetic nervous system that's kind of rest, recovery, relaxation, repair. And then there's a sympathetic nervous system, which of course is adrenaline, stress, and drives kind of those kinds of responses. And when you're in that fight or flight sympathetic side of the system, it's interesting. You're shutting down your ability to actually release not only the toxins in your interstitial spaces, in other words, the area between your cells, but also it's difficult to let go of emotional baggage when you're in fight or flight, right? And so what you're saying is that with these techniques you're doing, you're able to actually transition people away from being in sympathetic nervous system dominant tone into parasympathetic nervous system tone, which actually is increasing their lymphatic drainage. And then they're also having this emotional release at the same time. That's really quite fascinating.
Yeah. So some of our research we've done in our tech, we recognise, so we worked with New Zealand Police and we did one session a week for 40 minutes over a 3-week period. And we saw a 91% improvement to sleep and up to a 62% reduction in stress and 53% in anxiety. So if you think about that, how does that correlate to the lymphatics? Well, if you're improving lymphatic function, in other words, improving drainage, you're taking the pressure off from an inflammatory point of view, you're helping to improve circulation. But if you're also in that state of going into parasympathetic, you're going to literally do a body reset. You're going to create this new reality for the body to go stop being in fight flight all the time. Because sometimes we get out of sync. We lose sight of what is a normal. We create a new normal because our stress levels are consistent and constant.
Yep.
And we are creating this adaptive behavior. So you can see how then by moving the lymphatics, you're literally getting the flow back into your life again. And then you're encouraging the body to recover health-wise and longevity and improve the toxicity load and get the body dumping those byproducts. But if you're also engaging parasympathetic, you're engaging that deeper recovery and the body's getting that recognition point of a new normal.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can imagine that a team of people that could basically address some of the psychological, maybe the psycho-spiritual side of this, as well as the physiologic. It seems like a team of people could be actually helpful to folks that are kind of going through this process. Is that kind of what you have set up? Is it a team, or do you handle most of it yourself, or how does that work?
So we have, our technology is sold throughout the world, and so we're a Class 2 medical device, so it's used by health practitioners. So it ranges anything from biological dentistry, who use it to reduce the anxiety and stress associated to being at a dentist, and they find their recoveries faster, but they need less anesthetic, those kind of things, right through to plastic surgeons, for example, so post-surgical recovery. And then we have our psychologists, psychiatrists, and then in between that using it as well, because they find it down-regulates. And, you mentioned the body keeps a score. If you read his book, he's very much big about needing that somatic, that touch, that being held, that pressure, the hold. And the good thing about the technology was that this is something you get in fully clothed, and you're left to be in that for 40 minutes. You're monitored, but you are given that space to be held. And we're wrapping you up, loving you and hugging you as a very simplistic way of saying we're trying to get your body to go into parasympathetic so we can improve lymphatic drainage. Because if you're in fight flight, it's really hard, as you explained earlier, to drain the body.
So this is a little bit like putting a weighted blanket on a dog or something, right? It kind of calms them down, right? That sense of being held or so. Just describe for the audience what this looks like. So somebody comes in to see you and they're having something they're recovering from, or they have a lymphatic issue. And then you basically are wrapping them up. Are you wrapping their legs individually? There are basically these inflatable pants that people wear for recovery post-exercise. Is it something like that, or is it people are wrapped up in like a straitjacket, or what's it look like?
So the technology is called Flowpresso, and what it is so that.
What was that again? Sorry, I didn't catch
flow,
it.
As in flow, FLOW, Presso, PRESSO. So presso meaning pressure. And so it's a combination of compression and heat. So you talked about those compression pants that like that
Yes.
concept, except we individually wrap you. So the session is very individual. So we have feet, we have legs, we have the torso, we have arms, and we have a back piece as well. So the idea is I'm
Okay.
wrapping you as the individual, not just stock standard. And we're doing full body rather than, for example, my concern was if you are unwell and I'm putting you in compression on your legs only, I'm pushing fluid up into your pelvic basin. And then what am I doing from there? Most people are sitting up.
Hmm.
It requires the body to pump it up against gravity. And if they're not breathing efficiently and they're not well enough, they can't do that. So what happens? You stand up and
Hmm.
it just gravity has an impact. So we put you in this suit. We adapt all the pressures to a hug, not a blood pressure cuff squeeze. So every chamber is individualized to you and your response and how you feel. Because if I'm putting too much pressure on, we don't engage parasympathetic. It's all about that. It's your experience to you as the individual.
That
Yes,
makes sense to me. Okay, great. All right. So you're really kind of wrapped up, and I guess the legs are wrapped individually. Is that correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay. So I'm just getting the audience to try to visualize this. So you're really kind of in this wrap, which is then applying pressure. Is it milking? Is it like a pressure wave that comes up the leg? There are
Yeah.
pressure pants like that also. Yes.
Yeah, so it's like a sequential. So we have to, with lymphatics, you have to create the momentum. So think of it like a
Right.
tube of toothpaste.
Right.
We're squeezing you from the bottom
Okay.
up.
Right. That makes sense. So now you're kind of milking the tissue kind of up from the feet up through the legs and then through the torso and the arms back in. So it's kind of like you're sitting there with compression and release, and then it sounds like there's some warmth that's included with this also, which I suppose is very comforting. It's very comforting to be hugged, right? It's very comforting to cuddle. Very comforting to have a weighted blanket on, things like that. So this is probably kind of falling in that category. I'm thinking, is that right?
Yes, and also coming back to the circulatory system, you want the vasodilation. You want to be able to get that blood circulation as well, because it's not always
Okay.
a lymphatic problem. It
Okay.
can be a
Okay. Now I get
circulatory as well. So we're trying
it.
to
Right.
move you on
So
all
when you're
levels. And
mm, so when you're putting the heat in, now you're increasing vasodilatation in the tissues, right? Because when we exercise or we get hot, the arteries and arterioles and capillaries, everything dilates, right? Because you're bringing more blood to the surface to cool yourself. So if you're doing that, now all of a sudden you're kind of, I wouldn't say turbocharging, but you're certainly increasing the entire circulatory rate, which is then contributes to the lymphatic system flowing more briskly also, is what you're saying. Is that correct? Yeah.
yes, that is.
Okay. Got it. Well, that's fascinating.